1,000 meters below the surface. Beyond the reach of the sun, the Midnight Zone represents the largest and most mysterious habitat on Earth, encompassing roughly 75% of the ocean's total volume. Which means most of the living space on this planet looks like this. And we have almost no idea what happens here. We have sent submarines down here, dropped cameras on cables miles long, dragged nets through the dark and hauled back whatever they caught, and found that it's not an extreme version of the ocean we know. It's a different place entirely. Every answer we pull from it arrives trailing 3 more questions. From those nets, what came up was mostly dead. Animals that spent their whole lives under pressure so extreme that the moment you remove it, their bodies distort and collapse. Most of it was unrecognizable by the time it hit the deck. But something kept turning up in those nets that stopped people cold. Bloated, dark, deeply ugly. A mouth disproportionately large for its body, full of teeth designed by something with a grudge. And growing from its forehead, a dangling rod tipped with a small glowing bulb. And in a place this dark, that is the most dangerous thing imaginable. Because in a world with no sun, no reference, no way to know what anything is, a single point of light is the one thing nothing can ignore. Early naturalists assumed it was broken, something lost between the deep and the deck. The idea held for years, because the alternative was harder to sit with. This was the anglerfish, exactly as evolution had made it, and the more carefully anyone looked, the more unsettling the picture became, not only because it was monstrous, but because it was built for a world that we couldn't access, and one we were never meant to see. Every grotesque detail pointed back to a world so hostile, so empty, so completely cut off from everything we understand, that it forces life to reinvent the rules entirely. What kind of world produces something like this? This episode is sponsored by Incogni. We'll return to them later in the video. Till now, confirmed sightings of a living anglerfish in the wild number fewer than 30. What we have instead are bodies pulled from nets, specimens in jars, tissue samples, the occasional deep-sea camera catching something before it disappears back into the dark. And that's not a failure of research, it's the honest state of the science right now. Swimming into an anglerfish alive is the marine biology equivalent of winning the lottery. Each one becomes an international event, shared across labs, news desks, and across continents, because every encounter with this animal carries the weight of something that may not happen again for years. On the surface, life is powered by sunlight. It flows through ecosystems continuously. Plants capture it, animals consume it, and predators follow. A system that feels simple and predictable. But in the Midnight Zone, that entire system disappears. Pressure runs around 100 atmospheres, enough to crush a submarine that isn't built for it. Temperature locks in just above freezing and stays there. No seasons, no variation. The darkness isn't an absence of light, but a permanent condition. With no sunlight, nothing grows here. No plants, no primary source of energy to build the foundation of a food chain. What reaches this depth is only what falls from above. Marine snow, biologists call it. A slow drift of dead matter, fragments of organisms, waste breaking apart as it sinks through thousands of meters of water. By the time it arrives, only a small fraction of its original energy remains. And that's the only energy source here, an entire ecosystem, dependent on whatever happens to fall through it. Unpredictable. Uneven. Some areas get more than others. Some get almost none. Which means food isn't something you can rely on. A creature here might go weeks without encountering anything worth eating. so the body has to change around that reality. Muscle is expensive. In an environment where the next meal could be days away, carrying bulk you can't afford to fuel becomes a liability. What you see in the animals that live here is a kind of ruthless reduction. Everything that isn't essential gets stripped back over generations until what remains is closer to the minimum than anything we'd recognize from the surface. Metabolism drops so far that by surface standards, these animals would barely register as alive. Pressure at this depth runs around 100 atmospheres. The animals here don't withstand it. Their tissue has roughly the same density as the water surrounding them, so there's nothing for the pressure to act against. It's only when you pull them upward, remove that pressure too quickly, that their bodies can't cope. Some animals down here don't swim so much as drift, letting the current do the work, because the current is free. On the surface, a predator can track movement, read the water, cover distance, but down here, the ocean is vast. And with no light, the entire logic of hunting shifts. Chasing burns energy you may not have. That's why the anglerfish landed on a different answer entirely, by growing a lure and remaining still. In a place this empty, that light may be the only one for miles. And something always comes toward it. At first glance, the anglerfish doesn't seem built for anything in particular. Soft body, almost gelatinous, no musculature worth speaking of, nothing that suggests it could pursue anything. Compared to every predator we know from the surface, it reads as unfinished. Because most of what we think a predator should be is based on environments where encounters are common, down here, that logic fails. So instead of becoming faster or stronger, the anglerfish becomes more specific. Its entire body is built around a single requirement. When something finally comes close, it cannot be allowed to leave. The mouth reflects that immediately. It isn't just large, it dominates the animal. The teeth angle inward, not for cutting or tearing, but for retention. They act more like a one-way system. Once something crosses that boundary, there's no reversing out of it. Because the anglerfish doesn't have the luxury of choosing the right prey, it takes what arrives. The stomach follows the same logic. It can stretch far beyond what the body's size would suggest, doubling in some cases to accommodate whatever arrives. But the animal most people picture when they hear anglerfish is actually one branch of a much larger family. The teleost order Lophiiformes, commonly known as the anglerfishes, contains a diverse array of marine fishes, ranging from benthic shallow water dwellers to highly modified deep-sea midwater species. They comprise 321 living species placed in 68 genera, 18 families, and 5 suborders. The monkfish on a restaurant menu is an anglerfish, so are frogfish and batfish, walking the seafloor on modified fins. But approximately half of the species' diversity is occupied by deep-sea ceratioids, distributed among 11 families. All of them use some version of the same lure. In shallow water, where there is light, the lure tends to be simpler, a small fleshy appendage, waved or twitched to mimic a worm or small creature. It works because the prey can see it clearly enough to be fooled. But the deep-sea species, the ceratioids, took that strategy and pushed it to an extreme that the shallow water relatives never approached. In the midnight zone, roughly 3/4 of all deep-sea creatures produce their own light, generated from within through a chemical reaction between a protein and an enzyme that, when they meet in the presence of oxygen, produces a cold blue glow, appearing out of living tissue in one of the darkest places on the planet. Down here, light is not illumination. It is language. It can be camouflage. It can be a signal. The structure growing from the female's forehead is called the elysium, a modified dorsal spine. At its tip sits the esca, a small fleshy bulb that glows. Depending on the species, it pulses or drifts or holds perfectly still in the dark. But what produces that glow is not the fish. Inside the esca lives a colony of bioluminescent bacteria, drawn in from the surrounding water through small pores in the tissue. The bacteria produce a blue-green light as a byproduct of their own metabolism. The anglerfish just provides the environment. In exchange, it gets a lure that never switches off, that requires no energy from the fish itself. Blue-green because that wavelength travels furthest through seawater. But a glowing light in total darkness creates a problem. Some of that light bounces back and hits the body behind it, and if whatever is approaching sees not just a light, but a fish holding a light, the trap fails. So the anglerfish disappears. The skin of many ceratioid species absorbs nearly all light that touches it. Not dark or darkly pigmented like most animals. It's ultra-black. Some species reflects just 0.5% of incoming light. For context, black velvet reflects around 1%. Their outer skin contains a dense, seamless layer of melanosomes, organelles packed with melanin, irregularly arranged so incoming light bounces between them repeatedly, each bounce stripping away more of it until almost nothing escapes. The same principle behind vantablack, except this one evolved in a fish. Around 56 million years ago, during a period of rapid and extreme global warming, now called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, the world's oceans destabilized. Shallow water ecosystems were disrupted severely enough that some fish moved down, away from the warming surface, into depths that had never been colonized by anything like them. They didn't come back. The deepest living species of anglerfish ever recorded is the whip-nose anglerfish, or Gigantactus gargantua, recorded at 5,866 meters below the surface, nearly 6 kilometers down. But the first thing that surprises most people when they finally encounter one is how small it is, because the version of the anglerfish we carry in our head feels enormous, thanks to Finding Nemo. In 2014, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute filmed a humpback anglerfish, often called a black sea devil, genus Melanocetus, a species that normally lives hundreds to thousands of meters deep. It was caught on camera at 580 meters in Monterey Canyon. The footage spread immediately. The animal looked genuinely threatening on camera, but it was the size of a human fist. Then, in early 2025, one surfaced near the Canary Islands in daylight and was caught on camera by a wildlife photographer. It died shortly after. The footage went further than the first. An animal that had spent its entire existence in total darkness had come to the surface and seen the sun. Though nobody is entirely sure how it got there, but the explanations usually point in a few directions. If the fish was sick, dying, or disoriented, it may have lost its ability to maintain depth. Deep-sea species do not move like surface predators. They rely on neutral buoyancy and minimal effort, so when that internal balance fails, they can gradually rise through the water column without control. Around the Canary Islands, ocean conditions can also push deeper water toward the surface. This process, known as upwelling, can sometimes carry deep-sea organisms upward. However, for a live anglerfish to reach the surface this way is still extremely rare. But what's more strange is that an animal built for such an empty, unforgiving world manages to survive there at all. Generation after generation, where even staying alive depends on chance. Beyond that, there is an even greater challenge. At some point, you have to reproduce. And in the entire history of studying this animal, almost everything we know comes from females. The males were so different that when scientists first encountered them, they classified them as a separate species entirely. It took years before anyone worked out what they were actually looking at. They are almost unbelievably small, just 1 to 3 centimeters long, barely the size of a fingernail. The females, by contrast, are giants in comparison, growing dozens of times longer and hundreds of thousands of times heavier. After hatching from an egg, the male spends its early life as a free-swimming larva. It has large, well-developed eyes, an olfactory system that is, relative to its body size, among the most sensitive in the vertebrate world. For a brief window, it is a complete, functional, independent animal. But it has no lure. As adults, males in many ceratoid species lose the ability to feed independently. And from the moment it reaches sexual maturity, its body is already running on whatever reserves it managed to build before that point. It has weeks, or possibly less. The female can afford to wait. Its entire biology is built around conserving energy and staying in position for long periods. The male doesn't have that option. Its existence is defined by a single objective: find a female before it runs out of energy. But that's only half the problem. The deep ocean is vast and mostly empty, with individuals spread across distances where encounters are rare enough to be almost accidental. There are no fixed paths or shared spaces, nothing that guarantees two animals will ever meet. See, in the midnight zone, survival often depends on remaining unseen. But online, most of us are easier to find than we think. Personal details like your name, phone number, address, email, and even relatives can end up on data broker and people search sites, where they can be used for profiling, scams, or identity theft risks. That is why this video is sponsored by Incogni. Incogni helps wipe your personal information from the internet by contacting data brokers and people search sites on your behalf. Instead of you spending hours finding these companies, filling out removal forms, and repeating the process again and again, Incogni handles it for you. They submit removal requests, track the responses, and keep checking because data can come back. Their message is simple: if they can't find you, they can't harm you. To start removing your personal information, go to incogni.com/mrscience, or simply scan the QR code on screen. Again, that is incogni.com/mrscience. Now, back to an animal living in a world where being found is almost impossible. So how does a 2-centimeter fish find anything in the midnight zone? Well, it starts with the female. Its lure does more than attract prey. When ready to mate, it releases chemical signals into the water, and the male, whose olfactory system exists almost entirely for this one purpose, picks them up, follows them through the dark until it finds the source. And then it bites in. The male latches onto the female's body and holds. And this is where it gets genuinely strange. The tissues begin to fuse. Their circulatory systems gradually merge. The male's eyes degrade and internal organs reduce. Over time, what was basically an independent animal reduces to a sack of gonads, kept alive by the female's blood supply, existing for one purpose: providing sperm. In some females, this happens more than once. Multiple males, each fused at a different point, all reduced to the same function. Now, here's the part that still genuinely puzzles researchers. In most vertebrates, the immune system would just reject any foreign tissue immediately. That's what makes this physically impossible in virtually every other animal we know. But in these anglerfish, parts of that system are either reduced or absent. So, has the male essentially become the female's balls? Kind of, yes. The female doesn't go looking for a mate when it needs to reproduce. It already has one, or several actually, permanently attached, always available. Scientists have named this sexual parasitism, and it is, by every measure, the most extreme reproductive arrangement ever recorded in a vertebrate animal. But there's a problem beneath all of this. Most of what we know about these animals doesn't come from observing them alive. It comes from what we've pulled out of the ocean after it's already dead. damaged by the pressure change, often barely intact by the time it reached the surface. Their evolutionary origins remain elusive because of the lack of fresh material for a majority of the deep-sea ceratioids and the incompleteness of the fossil record. So much of what we understand comes from fragments. From those remains, scientists have tried to reconstruct how these animals live, how they feed, and how they manage to find each other in the dark. Some of those conclusions turned out to be right. Others are still assumptions, because seeing them alive in their actual environment remains genuinely rare. We don't know how long anglerfish live. The standard method for aging fish involves counting growth rings in a small bone in the inner ear, the same principle as counting rings in a tree. It works for fish that experience seasonal variation. In the midnight zone, there are no seasons. We don't know how they communicate beyond the pheromone system in reproduction, whether they produce sound, whether the light serves any function beyond hunting and mate attraction, whether they have any social behavior at all, or whether every individual lives and dies in complete isolation. The deep ocean covers most of this planet, and the portion we've actually observed is a fraction of it. What we have, assembled from a handful of sightings and several decades of net samples and laboratory analysis, is a partial picture of an animal that has been on this planet for 100 million years. And that's the honest position. It shows how little of this planet we have actually accessed. The Midnight Zone covers the majority of Earth's living space, and we can visit it the way you might visit the surface of Mars. Briefly, expensively, with equipment that was never quite built for what it finds there. We have been seriously studying it for less than a century. Which is why the anglerfish, once you understand the environment it came from, stops looking extreme. It looks like the expected outcome, a coherent solution to a very specific set of problems, produced by the same process that built everything else, just pointed somewhere most evolution never goes.